I'm not gonna lie, there were some positives to take away from the play-in tournament. The first of which, I mean, it's because of the pandemic. It's probably the biggest reason for the NBA. It's,
For sure.
I mean, it's more revenue. The NBA needs more money. They're looking to, like every business, they're looking to recoup the damages that happened because of COVID. So obviously, the play-in tournament, it drives revenue. It gets recognition. Just the excitement of, holy shit, my team who is sitting at the 8th spot could potentially be out of the playoffs now, is pretty. The excitement that it drives up, which is another positive, generates more revenue for the NBA. The NBA is able to sell that to networks. So that's obviously a big playing factor. And again, more revenue for the league means more money for players, for contract negotiations. So that's always a great positive by this play-in tournament. Another,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Like as we were talking about, right? It's a chain of the NBA being able to recoup that money, which will go to the players, to the staff, everyone involved. And if you guys remember too, like there's that report of the NBA lost like $1 billion or something. So yeah, they clearly need some more money. And this is probably one of their biggest ways to make some of that money back.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other thing that the NBA is really trying to accomplish with the play-in tournament is to mitigate teams from tanking for lower seeds. Because obviously now with the play-in incorporating the 9th and 10th seeds, teams in those positions have a less incentive to tank because now they're like, hey, we have a shot to get our team in the playoffs. So this, in theory, creates more opportunity for younger and less star-filled team to kind of get a chance to play in the playoffs, which it could be a big deal for a young team or small market franchise as well.
Yeah, so this was like, I guess, the other main factor of the NBA creating this playing tournament. Now, if you guys remember, like the NBA has been cracking down on tanking ever since Sam Hinkie literally just said it outright that Philadelphia was tanking completely. Adam Silver has made it a point to try to mitigate this issue within the league. For example, creating more even odds in the draft lottery so that teams who are terrible are not guaranteed a top pick, right? AKA the New York Knicks was it last year, a couple years ago, whatever it was. So, like that was another big factor of the NBA creating this playing tournament. Now, moving on to, yeah, you want to say something?
No, I'm good, yo.
Uh, yeah, okay. So moving on to the cons of the playing tournament. Now, first of all, I think I have to reiterate that the playing tournament was widely accepted last year because of the fact that the season itself was cut short, right? And that was the main reason why it was so widely accepted and why people didn't really have a problem as much with this playing tournament because it was like, there was a number of games left in the season. How are we going to balance that with whoever's already guaranteed to make the playoffs? And so the NBA created the playing tournament. This season, that's not the case, right? This season is almost a full season, right? There's no games that have been canceled completely. So the NBA and the playing tournament itself has not had the same support this year. And one of the reasons why, and arguably the biggest reason why, is the fact that it ruins the point of working all year for a 7th or 8th seed. And this is something that Luka Doncic touched upon a couple of weeks ago, which we even talked about. It ruins the just the whole objective of working all year for a 7th and 8th seed. Now you can say, oh yeah, if you're a 7th or 8th seed, you deserve to be in the playing tournament because of the fact that you're a fringe playoff team, you're not that good. But that's an argument in the Eastern Conference, I guess. In the Western Conference, that's not a real argument. We're looking at we're going to touch upon it, but looking at the 7th and 8th seeds right now in the Western Conference, like you can't say they suck as a team, right? Those teams, you can't say they suck. So having them as a 7th or 8th seed, working all this long, working throughout the season for the 7th and 8th seed and have the potential to just get booted out in 2 games it kind of ruins the point of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest sour points of the play-in that I really felt about was that, for instance, if my favorite team, I wish they were in the 7th spot, but if they were in the 7th,
I don't.
I mean, that's a topic for another day. But if they were in a playoff position, a 7th or 8th seed, which is typically a playoff position in previous seasons, why should they be punished and have to participate in a play-in tournament that potentially will make it so that they lose. We're going to talk about teams that are on certain hot streaks that, but because of the timing of the play-in tournament, could win 2 games and now they're in a playoff spot. So it really just diminishes the work that a team does. And again, I know, the imbalance of power in the NBA, the imbalance of star power is always going to be an issue. But at the same time, is that it's, this league's about wins and losses. So if a team wins more than another team, they deserve to be in a playoff position. Just kind of how it works.
I think based off of that point too, I think the NBA already had a problem with people relaxing during the regular season and the regular season suffering from rating drops because of the fact that people just don't take the regular season that serious anymore. And I think this will just add on to it, right? Because of the fact that, like, now it just creates, and this is my next point, it creates, it allows more undeserving teams to get into the playoffs. Now you theoretically have 10 teams in playoff contention rather than the 8 that already was, which people already argued was a bit too much, right? If you look at the NFL situation, NFL actually has gone into more of the NBA's direction now. But, people already argued that having 16 out of 30 teams in the NBA playoffs was already too much. Now that's theoretically like 20 teams vying for a real playoff spot. And so an undeserving team, for example, a team that either coasted throughout the regular season and did not care, just wanted to get into the playoffs, or a team that was complete garbage in the regular season, but somehow managed to sneak into that 10th seed and somehow win 2 games in the play-in tournament and boot out, the more deserving 8th or 7th seed. So this is another point that I think can be argued against the use of the play-in tournament.
Yeah, no, I think you said it best. I mean, like, it really, it's such a fine line that the NBA is kind of walking on. And like you said, like, you can argue the 1-8, the 2-7 matchup is probably the most garbage matchups that we see in the playoffs, especially in the Eastern Conference. It's just because, again, the talent level is just not there. And again, potentially, if you're getting a what should have been a 10th seed now in that position of the 8th seed, that's going to make an even worse product on the court as well. So again, like, it's like you said it, like, it's basically like 20 teams now have a shot at making it to the playoffs, which sounds great for a league that wants to encourage teams to be more competitive. But at the same time, it's not really, gaining anything as far as putting on a better product unless you have a balance of power where every team, like, it's like the NFL, for instance, where every team has a pretty even shot at beating them on any given night.
Yeah, I think you nailed it pretty much, right? With the NBA versus NFL comparison, where they're going towards the NBA's, like, direction more. But to your point, the NFL actually has a competitive balance between pretty much all the teams, right? The NBA unfortunately does not have that pro for them. They have a very uncompetitive league driven by star power. Another factor that goes into the cons of the play-in tournament is that there's more schedule condensing. Brandon Clark recently talked about it on The Score, that they're already playing a hectic 72-game schedule. Pretty much everyone's been injured this season. Everyone's had COVID. Everyone's just been in and out. And this has just been a season from hell for everyone. And now you're condensing the schedule even further. And especially if you go into next season with this play-in tournament, where players are already sitting out because they didn't want to play 82 games. And then now you're throwing in more games on top of that. And, Hani was even talking about it with me before we started this episode, the fact that it's going to push the playoffs and the regular season so close together that it's very hard for teams to, find that time to rest, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, again, this season might be an anomaly because, again, of how things kind of transpired in the league calendar. But I think at the same time, the league, if this is going to be a reoccurring thing, which to be honest with you, I hope it doesn't, the NBA is going to have to rework the whole schedule because you cannot expect the players to play 82 games, then expect another 4 or 5 teams to play another 2 games potentially on that schedule. That's 84 games, so that's unfair to the other teams only playing 82. So something is going to have to be reworked in that manner to make it so that everyone's playing the same amount of games. But again, I don't know of a way to do that, logistically at least. And the NBA had made it pretty clear they don't want to reduce the amount of games because they lose money doing that. So
Exactly. Yeah. It's a fine line the NBA is walking. And two more final points about the cons of the play-in tournament. Number one, I think me just being I guess a hoop head in terms of like a basketball historian, I think it hits me more than I guess the regular fan would. But it kind of messes up the leaderboards and records, all-time records wise. Now again, it probably won't do too much, but 2 games at a time over a number of years kind of adds up. And again, like these things will happen because of rule changes and whatnot. The 3-point line, for example, messed up a bunch of records, right? You can argue, but I don't know, for me as a basketball historian, kind of it doesn't sit completely right with me. And then one other point that Hani brought up was the fact that it kind of messes up lottery odds and draft predictions for the teams involved. So, if you're clearly, if you want to get a top 10 pick or whatever, now it's just like the play-in tournament just throws a monkey wrench into everything.
yeah, like as far as the leaderboard and records, like it's gonna be weird. Like just like when they first added the 3-point shot, it's like, well, now some players are gonna play 2 extra games, and some players are gonna have an opportunity to get more points and more assists, and it's it's just it's just weird. I don't know how beneficial it will be, and again, the lottery odds is another thing because again, you know, the only picks that I know for sure based on the odds that are very solidified is maybe 1 through 5, if that. Anything past that, you really got to throw your arms up and you got to be like, who knows where they're gonna land? Like, you can be 7th or you can be 14th. Now, I believe there is a contingency for that. Like the NBA has put it so that the way the standings are before the play-in is where you get your draft pick, which also doesn't make any sense. So you can make the playoffs.
Wait, what? Really?
It's something I read.
Nah, that's dumb, bro.
No, but
if that's actually the case,
but
that's
take it in.
stupid.
Like that's what some teams would argue. I think like that's why I don't understand it, because again, it doesn't make sense. Why would a team who finished 10th gets the 10th best odds of making it, getting a lottery pick, and then on top of that makes the playoffs? It just, I don't know. Maybe it's because I don't know what's the NBA's official ruling on this, because we haven't gotten any update on that. But that,
I mean,
yeah.
Flipping it to the opposite point of view, imagine that you work all year for that 8th or 7th seed, you get booted out of the playoffs, and now you still have worse odds at a draft pick.
Yeah.
Right? That's pretty stupid, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the main point is, I think we can both, it's pretty obvious, but do you like the idea of a play-in tournament?
Personally, no. I don't see the point of it. Yes, is it exciting? Will it create some buzz in the NBA, to get teams in? Sure. But I think holistically, when you're looking at it, like, I don't want to see a 10th seed potentially make it to the playoffs. Like they're a 10th seed for a reason. Like even now, like our team, the Raptors, are the 11th seed right now in the Eastern Conference. And we're kind of like, do we really want to see them get to the play-in tournament when they get slapped in the first round? Like, is that really beneficial? Or could we rather, just take our chances and get a lottery pick and kind of have the offseason to rest and recover and then come back next year and let's do it again? I personally think
pretty much.
I personally think that's the better way to go. But again, it could just also be that it's just kind of the way things have been, and it's been a little bit more traditional that way for me. But
yeah, I guess the traditional sense does play a factor into our decision of not liking it. But I don't know, man. Just based off of everything that we touched upon, I would say, man, like I personally don't like the idea of a play-in tournament. If you want to make the regular season more interesting, I think there has to be another way to do it. I don't think the play-in tournament is it, to be honest.
It's just not worth it, to be honest with you. And it's just not worth the extra investment that the NBA is trying to put into it. Like there's better ways to go about like mitigating tanking or generating more revenue. So yeah, so those were our thoughts on the actual, like the format of the play-in tournament and kind of the pros and cons of it.